Welcome back to TEAS. This is our second of two sessions. We heard that there's some people who are having problems getting onto Etherpad. I was able to get in, but I'm getting in through a VPN. I don't know if that helped or not. But other people are saying that they couldn't get in. But please do try to join and help us out with the minutes. As we do in every start of every session, we show our note well, and please remember that anything you say during the session at the mic is part of our record, our permanent record, and is considered a contribution to the IETF. All contributions to the IETF are governed by BCP 79. You can go read that. And also, if you're interested in looking at learning more about the policy, go to the URL at the bottom of the page. As before, as always, we are streaming audio, video. We're also recording the video, and we published after the meeting. When you come to the mic, please speak your name. And we just had a conversation with chairs, and someone pointed out that there is no need to state your affiliation, just your name. For agenda, we're going to start out. It's funny, it froze there this last time. Hopefully the screen will catch up. We're going to start out with taking a few more minutes on the last agenda item from our previous session. Well, apparently our laptop is having the same problem with the slides it did last time. It's really weird. Okay. Oh, had it there for a second. I should have let Pavan drive this time. Right, so Sergio's here is going to talk about the path computation, the Yang model for path computation. The rest of the second session, we're going to just steal 5 minutes from different presenters, and we're actually thinking some of these will go faster anyway. The other thing is we have moved the enhanced VPN earlier in the slot. That's it for the intro. Pavan, anything else? Okay. Which slide would you like to go to?
One.
So I don't know if you want to queue up those people who were talking when we broke before lunch.
Yes. Italo talked with Igor.
Igor's still here. That's good. See who did not come back from lunch yet. Which slide would you like?
The previous one? Yes, this one.
So we had a discussion with Italo. He reminded me about discussion we had before. So it's basically my fault. But the difference is that if you configure a tunnel in pre-computation mode, and even if you specify the timeout for how long you keep the state, the server can remove the state after the timeout, but the configuration will still supposed to be in the intended configuration data store and needs to be explicitly removed. While if you do it via RPC, this is not a problem. So the authors think this is an important difference, and it can relieve certain pains from the client. So I have no objection to that.
My question is in the next slide. I'm Dhruv. Yeah, so coming to this, I'm a little surprised by why you want to mandate that this RPC should only be used in a hierarchy of controller fashion. To me, RPC is just an RPC, and we should allow it to be used by whoever who wants to invoke the RPC, and that should be fine. So why, and especially also from the model point of view, I think the change that Olivier was asking to allow the same RPC also to be used in a peer-to-peer fashion was a small change. It did not require a big change in your model. So why should we mandate? Like, what's the main reason that you want to feel that, no, this document should not satisfy the need of anybody who wants to use your RPC in a BRPC-like fashion?
No, no, yeah, it is not a mandatory assumption. In fact, this is the point of the discussion. So the question for the working group that read the drafts, we suppose that we can use that also in case of, independent of the architecture that you use it. The question that is coming on the next slide, the working group, if they think, the working group think that is needed to have some modification of the YANG to cope also with the aspect or not. And if it is needed to have a specific description of the use cases, or just say, independently of the architecture, this RPC is used to make a request independent of the fact that it's a sequential, flat, distributed architecture or hierarchical. This is next slide. Yeah, exactly. This is the question that we want to highlight to the working group.
Dhruv, again, my suggestion is I think it should be. It's a very small change. Though I like ACTN, I prefer that approach, but we should not ban that this RPC should only be used in one approach. If there is a comment coming in the mailing list and somebody wants to use your YANG model in a different way, and it's a small change, I think we should allow it. My person. Thank you.
Okay. There has been some suggestion to use flag to say, yes, this is distributed or hierarchical. Not sure. We are not sure that this is needed. We can discuss further. Anyway, our position would be that the RPC should be used independent of the architecture. This is the point. And the picture that is in the slide before is tried to depict anyway how we can cope also with the representation of DSC and PNC typically in the ICTN context. Next slide.
Just to be clear of the takeaway, you're planning to support both hierarchical and non-hierarchical. It's
Yes.
the only question right now is whether you need an explicit flag or some explicit indication of that. And you're not right. And you're not convinced that it's even necessary that the current can do both.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Next slide. Next.
This one.
Okay. So we have an issue about the request that path computation is able to support the protection path. The case can be or that you have already a path and you want to set up a protected path, or you have no tunnel and starting from zero you have a protected path computed. We have, we have two possible alternatives in the YANG model. One alternative with a single request to compute working and protecting path related to a single tunnel, or to have two requests to compute a working path and the other that is dealing with a protecting path, and with association between the two requests within the same RPC. This is more or less the approach that is also, if I'm not wrong, is in the PCAP context. So you have no directly path computation for both, but you need to associate the two computed paths. Well, next slide, we just compose a table with pros and cons from our understanding. Okay, we can go through. I don't want to comment and leave the comments to the working group. Basically, the question that is put in red in the bottom is general question. If it is possible that anyway the path computation can be used without TIA tunnel model, with another connection tunnel model, and so RPC is not mandated to have specific semantics that is related to the tunnel model. This is basically the question on the bottom, and this is some comparison of the two possibility to modify Young model. We color with the same color the dual possibilities. So, for example, in case of pros on the single tunnel request, you have implicit support of the other association Young proposal in the tunnel model, like bidirectional, and instead, in case of two requests, you need to define specific mechanism. But on the other side, the fact that to have two path requests is basically following what is the structure of the path, with the path computation without imposing any heavy modification, as instead is the case in yellow in the cons, in case you follow the option 1. So this is just a summary table. I complete and then I leave. I complete the presentation, then I can leave. So.
Before we leave that, did you have a recommendation there?
Well, we have opinion, personal opinion, but well, the draft is a working group draft.
Sure, but are those but you're allowed to have an opinion. So the authors who are working on it, do you have a recommendation to the working group, or do you think it's a from your standpoint, a coin toss, or are the authors split? That's useful information. So you're split. Yes. That's great. That's useful information. Thank you. To me, it seems like a no-brainer, but I'm just one person also.
Yeah.
So here we summarize the situation of the open issue. We have our GitHub that summarize all the aspects and tracking the open issue. We have closed 3 open issues since the Bangkok meeting. We have only 8. The three are specific for path computation. 3 are related also for other for tunnel model, and the last 2 are one is editorial, so is a review terminology. We receive a comment from the mailing list, and the other is is a pending issue that we need to fix in the text to put an example of the Young model as soon as the model is completely stable, and then we want to add a specific example to depict how his work. Next slide. Next. So we acknowledge some people that help us our work, and apart Carlo Francesco that help us technically. With there are also some help for the discussion, both for the changing that we made in the Young model for the path state, and also for the discussion. We thanks Olivier, Igor, Adrian, and Young to help the discussion about this topic regarding hierarchical aspect or distributed one in the context of path computation. next step. So obviously we want to resolve the open issue, and we have a weekly cooperation with tunnel model and topology model authors. We need to provide guidance for technology-specific augmentation for tunnel, for OTN tunnel, and WZone in the contest, in the summary, so also flexible grid tunnel authors. Well, we have in our mind, it is not written here, to have a possibility, not for the next meeting, but for the week after, to have in the position to ask for doctor review.
So that, all right, so that would be Singapore?
Yes.
One thing you didn't talk about is resolution of issues raised at the last meeting that were not discussed on list. The biggest one I remember is we had a long discussion related to policy and providing all objects.
Well,
Did that get resolved? I didn't see it in the document, but I freely admit I may have missed it.
yes, we have discussed in the mailing list and the open issue that has been resolved. And then the three one that is remain. One is the older one related, maybe you remember that, about the attributes that is used in all the attributes that is used to make the request in the tunnel model, that it is not so mandatory in the context of path computation.
Well, that was the discussion. There was a difference of opinion there.
Yes, actually we have solved the issue with a specific grouping for path computation that listed the basic one for the path computation request, but not
Okay.
the old one.
So it sounds like the resolution of the discussion from Bangkok is that you think there's agreement to go with what was in the document, which is only provide a partial list of attributes, not all attributes.
No problem.
Okay, well, it'd be good to see the response from the floor here. I may have distracted Igor because now I've given him a second topic to talk about.
Okay, so basically this open issue, we discussed it. There was several exchanges. I personally do not like the option of having a separate request linked together, mainly because not only you have to link them, but you also basically describe relationships, how this resulting path should be related. Like, for example, what kind of disjointness you require, say, whether it's a several disjointness or linear disjointness. What happens if the desired disjointness is not available, but a lesser disjointness is? This one thing, right? The other thing is you will duplicate quite a few parameters, like there's common source destination, there's a bandwidth requirements, common affinities, exclusions, things like that. Okay, so if you would just provide a single request, then this is all taken care of. And finally, obviously, there are a lot of algorithms that actually compute paths simultaneously, and not, you can solve that, but it's a bit awkward rather than to have it in a single request.
Igor, about the attributes,
Sorry.
about the attributes that is repeated twice to have a double request, we put in the table. It is listed there.
Can we go back to that slide? This is Dhruv.
Which one?
The way the comparison between tunnel request and two-path request. I have a different opinion from Igor a little bit, especially from the sense that I want to retain two-path requests, because every time you ask for disjoint, that doesn't mean that they are going to be part of the same tunnel. So if you remove that you are taking away a very important feature that you currently provide, that even two unrelated paths can be diverse from each other, and I want that feature to still be there. So whether you want to go with a new tunnel request, I'll let you and the working group decide, but don't take away the thing that you already have in the document, which is two-path request via SVEC.
So, okay.
Himanshu from Siena. I have a third opinion. Why not support both? I think both has merits, like what Igor was saying, and Dhruv said. I think it would be quite flexible if we can support both. I mean, you can start, let's say you started with unprotected tunnel, and later on you want to add the protection. The two-path request gives you that, right? And for the same reason, what Igor was saying, the diversity, that what kind of diversity you want and all that, it's easier with the single tunnel request. So I think it would be nice if we can support both.
If I'm not mistaken, the parts of what Igor said is actually supported in this in the alternative of two separate requests because they're sent in the same RPC. So it's possible to compute through the single the algorithms that do K paths. So that's there. The other point though that Igor had is that you end up duplicating information. And that certainly is a valid point, particularly what happens if you get like some of the information conflicts. It does make it harder, but I think the point of being able to add protection later, so that sort of drives you to both, is hugely valid.
Yeah.
Julien Morik, I'm going to follow my predecessor there. I think it makes sense to support both for various reasons. Some of them were already stated. Also, there are various algorithms to be implemented underneath that could behave differently depending on single command request or separated requests. So I too believe that both modes should be considered.
Julien, you want that we work more hard,
Right. Just to answer Luz and Himanshu's point, basically when you add protection, it doesn't mean that you forget about the working path, right? You have to still do both things. You still have to consider the disjointness, and sometimes you even reroute the working path in order to that protection. So this basically it doesn't diminish this request. So I don't mind to have separate requests. I thought that, for example, when you compute paths for different tunnels, it's a different problem. So that could be solved differently, like through tunnel sets with the relationship between tunnels. This is not just disjointness. There's a lot of things that may be like a common optimization problem that you, for example, want to have the shortest common cost rather than basically shortest cost for each of them individually. But it's a separate, I don't mind to support both as long as we have this option to compute within a tunnel request.
Italo speaking. I'm not feeling comfortable with supporting both. It's creating potential nightmare on interoperability. Personally, I prefer the option that I don't like to be selected than to have two options, because otherwise we have one vendor support request tunnels and the other vendor support request paths, and then you have issues in the interoperability. And I'm fine, and I think all the issues can be solved with other options. It's just a matter of whether the RPC should make a request one per tunnel or should make a request one per path, and we can find a solution to make sure that the same semantic and the same features that we have, we can have with option one can be done with option two and vice versa, in my opinion. I don't see a real showstopper on one option versus the other. I'm just a little bit comfortable with two options because it's becoming an interoperability nightmare. Thank you.
Julien Morik again. Sorry, I haven't reread the draft very freshly, so I may be mistaken, but assuming we go for option one, do you see a way to prevent me from using the path computation module to achieve two by myself? I'm not sure you can prevent that. So assuming we will find a way to do option two, you need to support option one for some use cases, and I'll do option two my way, whatever. So maybe you shouldn't prevent it from happening.
So we should try to bring this to a close because we do have other things on the agenda. So is there any other feedback you'd like?
I'm sorry, just one thing. So you can always consider computing paths for different tunnels as just two unprotected tunnels, right? And this is also an option, right? So it's automatic option too, right? But you can even consider things that you have protected tunnels, which could be disjoint in a very different ways. For example, only walking paths should be disjoint, but not protection and stuff like that. So that's why I think basically option one covers everything.
So we should get some feedback. Maybe, yeah, I don't know if it's worthwhile to poll or not. It's actually, remember, as a working group document, it's the editor's responsibility to gauge what's going on in the working group. So would you like to do some polling, or do you feel like you had enough feedback?
I think that a poll can help, or anyway, some other. We have GitHub, and we can also track with mailing list some feedback.
Well, why don't we do a poll since we're here, and it's cheap. So we'll ask about just option one and option two. And I think Julian's comment is a good one. Is that keep in mind if we do option one, option two is going to be implicitly supported. So how many are in favor of including option one? We have a few. Slowly, more hands are coming up. It's just a few. How many think that option two is sufficient? I would say just slightly more. They're clustered to the front. That's part of the reason we don't come here, because we can't tell the difference between anywhere where people sit, but it's just slightly more. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, this is Haomian, and I'm going to present the applicability of young models for ACTN work.
So we're in shorter time then.
Yeah, as short as I can. Yeah, please, next page.
Just try to click it, see if that works.
Works, great. So the motivation of this work is to explain how the different types of young model in IETF develop in both, maybe a couple of working groups here are applicable to the ACTN structures. And this has been working group adopted for a while. And from last meeting, the main change actually is not big. We just add some description on the service provisioning in MPI, and we update the corresponding reference. So let's see what is happening after we update the work. So basically, on the architecture, we specify, okay, two interface, the usage of different IETF models in two interfaces. The first page, we focus on the CMI part. So we have a few of them. Actually, this part stays unchanged with the previous meeting, including the VPN Young model, T service mapping, performance mentoring, and layer 1, 2, 3 service model, T topology as well. So this part is stable at this moment. And the next page, we show the usage of young models for MPI, and this interface is basically focused on the network configuration and the interoperability for multi-vendors. What we have added so far is service provisioning, and we added to use the client signal model in CCAM working group and the T tunnel model, which is developed in TEAS working group. Actually, besides the T tunnel model, actually technology-specific tunnel models may also be used to do the service deployment. And we have also added this kind of description, so on the corresponding interface description. So, okay, we are very quick actually. So we have agreed in Bangkok that this work will be processed to working group last call after the T generic models. So we would like to cheer up the experts here to move on the generic ones first, and then this one. That's all.
Thank you. Thanks for being quick. That was great. Groove? This one? Yeah.
So I'll be talking about ACTN VN Yang model and remove the word ACTN there. It's just there in the file name. Now, that's our biggest change that we did based on the feedback that we got, that we removed the tight coupling that we had with the ACTN. So now we call this is as a VN Yang model. ACTN is still the primary reason why this primary example of how to use this VN Yang model, but we made it generic. And we removed the ACTN container wherever we had in the Yang model so that it could be applicable for other VN operations as well. So that's the main change that has happened in the document.
We'll fix it.
Okay, I'll not use this.
No, use it, but we'll
So this is basically just a refresher where does the VN Yang sits. The VN Yang uses the TE topology model and it's built over the TE topology model, but it is from the point of view of the customer. And it uses the single node abstract, single node connectivity matrix heavily, and uses that. Using that, it explains how the customer view of the VN is there. So basically, the main thing here was that we are reusing most of the things that are already there, but creating a wrapper over them from the point of view of the customer. Next slide. So this is giving you what are the other models that we have. So from the TE point of view, we have tunnel topology and VN, and we also have another work which will be presented later, which is the TE service mapping, which creates a grouping and augments that grouping in the various service model. So when you create an L3SM service, what is the underlying TE information that you can get via that augmentation? And it gives you at various levels and depends upon the choice, whether you want it at the VN level or you want at the topology level or at the end-to-end tunnel level. So this kind of gives you, based on what abstraction that the customer needs, and at that level, you can provide the traffic engineering underlay parameters. Next slide. So while we updated this, we also have some work to do. So we just wanted to give a heads up that this is what you should expect. We hope that we could have finished it, but we couldn't. So, but this you should see before the next IETF. So what are those things? We had various people who want to use VN model asking us how to use connectivity matrices. Can you explain this in a much better term? That what is the relationship between the two? Because when they think of using a model, it cannot be used on its own. You need to have a little bit coupling, also create the TE topology single node. So how do I use different Yang messages via netconf and restconf, first using ACTN VN model and then using the TE topology model, and how things comes together? That is the part where people want a little bit more clarification. So we have started writing that text, and hopefully this should be seen in the next version. People also ask the question that why you create a VN model. One of the main reasons is the service. So we wanted to maybe borrow some text from the service mapping as well and say that we are creating this because of this L3SM services or L2SM services, and this is where the VN model could be used. So only the part of the VN we might borrow from the service mapping model as well. Then we have enhanced VPN and other work coming in, which also says that it reuses ACTN concepts. So we wanted to describe how this VN Yang model can be used for VPN plus kind of use cases as well, and use references wherever is possible, but carry that information within this document so that anybody who comes and reads this gets the context where we are coming from, especially since we have now removed the word ACTN and this thing. So we wanted to make it a little bit more clearer how it is a generic VN model That's our next step. So heads up, if you have any suggestions how to do this, please reach out to the authors, and we will post this pretty soon, and definitely before the next IETF. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for doing the work and continuing bringing to closure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Young. I present traffic engineering and service mapping Young model on behalf of many co-authors and contributors. To give you some overview, what is T-service mapping? I think Drew kind of gave some precursor in VN context. We have several service model, layer 1, connectivity service model, layer 2 SM, layer 3 SM. We have T service mapping types. We separate it out because this is a common service policy or intent per se as to what kind of relationship my service have to do with respect to VN and tunnel, whether I want to have my own service isolated from others, and what is my availability expectation. So this is kind of intent or policy per se, and how. So we kind of separate out that service type, and I think the decision was instead of having one model, providing this T service mapping, we separate out each service model, and then we augment and import T service mapping type into that augmented model. So in this draft, we have 3 augmented models: layer 1, layer 3 SM T service mapping, layer 2, and layer 1. And we provide underlay references of how my instance is created in the underlay in terms of either T service, T tunnel or topology or even VN, so that the service creator can see some visibility of at least ID of my T tunnel created for service instance, so that they can find out more about how they are performed. So basically, this T service mapping model provide seamless service operation with underlay T network in terms of visibility and control. So that's kind of overview. So here we created a map type, so to speak. So map type basically give how my VN and tunnel selection policies are related. You can, as you see on the left side, new VN and tunnel binding. In there, we allow a customer to specify isolation constraints or intent. Like for instance, hard isolation with deterministic characteristics means I want my paths isolated from sharing with other people, other services, and I expect some kind of deterministic characteristic, and some other level, hard and soft. And also VN sharing, customer could request a VPN where tunnels can be shared with other existing VPNs. And a VN tunnel modify means this allows to modify some properties of existing tunnels in terms of bandwidth and other selection mode. And I think we added, before being adopted, availability. Some customer want to express my service to be available in terms of 6 nines or 5 nines and so on. And so this needs to be translated into network level policies in terms of protection and route policies. but intent doesn't dictate that. It's up to the network operation to meet this requirement or intent. So updates since last IETF. This was adopted after IETF. So there's name change, and we added general applicability statement. And so we kind of toned down ACTN context. This was actually never meant to be ACTN context because it's TE service mapping. But we put a little bit more text that this is generally applicable in any setting, any service model setting and underlay TE setting. Yeah, and we had to change some model because ACTN VN top container was removed from VN model, just to VN, so I'll clean up a little bit of Yang model. So this is, I think this is just the beginning of, in terms of maturity, I think it's a long way to go, and then many operators actually contacted us that they want to express certain intent and so on. So if you are especially operator, please, you know, contribute what kind of policy or intent you'd like to add on to this model. We'd be glad to work on that. And in the meantime, we try to progress to mature Yang model so that it can be ready for Yang doctor's review sooner than later.
It would be, there was a call during adoption from, sorry, there was a comment during the adoption call from Tom Petch, and it'd be really good to respond online, on the list to him.
Yes.
So the last I saw, I believe he said, you know, no one's responded. So it'd be good to respond.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I wish I had time to do that, but this time I just told him that I will. Yeah,
Good.
and we will. Okay.
Great, thank you.
And for the availability construct, do you have any reference, or is it something that you guys cooked up?
I think we can find some reference in maybe we need to dig up. But yeah, I think some operators express those, but I don't know which reference might be the best. I don't know. Maybe ITUT. I don't know.
What wasn't that came in from a comment from the last discussion? Maybe I remember it wrong. I think like Himanshu or someone made that comment. And that's what I thought. That's where this came from. But still, we need a good reference.
Himanshu, Win, Tim.
I'm blaming you at the last meeting for this, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, I think a reference thing is what Tom Petch is chasing after. Anyhow, so I will try to address
Yeah,
that.
but maybe he
Across
has
the board.
one. But I thought he brought
Okay,
it up.
right.
Maybe again, and maybe my memory's off. Thank you.
See, Tom?
So this is the one we moved out of order or into the right order.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jiedong from Huawei, and here is to give some update about the enhanced VPN framework document. Okay, a little recap. This document it describes a framework of the enhanced VPN service. The purpose is to support the requirements of some emerging services in 5G. And in general, it can be also used for other scenarios, like not that tightly coupled with 5G. And this document also summarizes some candidate technologies which can be used in different layers to provide this kind of enhancement. For example, the enhanced data plane, we can have different mechanisms to provide different levels of service SLA guarantees. And for the control plane, we're considering to use a hybrid of the centralized and distributed mechanism, which can take advantage of both kind of technology. And for the management plane, basically, it will provide some dynamic creation, modification, and the deletion of the VPN services with the required SLA. It also covers the OEM and the resiliency considerations. Okay, this is give an overview of this enhanced VPN architecture. Basically, in the bottom, it is built with some data plane technologies. We call it enhanced underlay, which can provide different mechanism for the resource reservation or resource partition. And on top of this, we have a middle layer. We can use it to create different virtual networks and to integrate the overlay connectivity with the underlying network resource to provide a guaranteed service to the customer. Then on the top, we need a centralized control and management system, which can communicate with the customer about the service request and also to report the status of the service. Here are some updates after the last IETF. Basically after the last IETF, we made a merge with some ACTN enhanced VPN and another slicing drafts. We made them part of the management section so that we can make a complete framework, including the data plane, control plane, and the management plane in this single document. We also have new co-authors and contributors added to this document. Then we have some editorial changes in this version. Then after that, this draft has been adopted by this working group, and we have a new revision after the adoption. Basically, this version mainly to solve the comments received about the scalability, which we talk about two mechanisms. The first is we consider that the enhanced VPN will not totally replace all the existing services in the network. It will only cover a subset of the services which require the enhanced characteristics. So this can solve part of the scalability concerns. And another thing is we can also use some kind of aggregation to bring a group of enhanced VPNs which have some similar behavior or similar characteristic requirements together so that we can reduce the state needed in the network. Another thing is we also pointed out we will try to avoid the proposed state in the network so that we can have better scalability. And in this version, there are also some editorial changes to improve the readability. About the next steps, first we will appreciate the review of this document and to solve the comments received. And we will also consider to add some description about the interdomain, interlayer scenarios. We will also add an operational consideration section and improve the security considerations. And the last thing is we also need to work together with the co-authors and the working group to polish the draft because we have some merge, and after that maybe we need to review each section about how we can make the content consistent and based on the update of the previous drafts, we need to see whether some update is needed in this one also. I think that's all for this one.
Good progress, thank you. There's a draft that was submitted to the LSR working group, and it's actually going to be talked about there today. No, this week. I can't remember when. And it's going to be headed our way, and I suspect has some overlap with this document. So it would be good to, if anyone's available, to go and see what's going on over there, and then think about synchronizing the content. I haven't looked at it enough. I just learned about it this week also. I haven't read it to know how good a match it is, or whether it really is independent work. But it'd be good for to be aware of that, and if you're able to go see it and talk to the author, that'd be great. I know she's here. It's in the second LSR session. Thursday afternoon, AC. Thank you, AC.
Thank you.
Chair. And I know the author is here, and I'm sure she'd be happy to talk with you.
At a glance of that document, I think that one is specific to some segment routing-based mechanism, and this one is more generic, like a framework. So maybe for this one, I think
they apparently have quite a bit of generic text in there.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why the LSR chairs would like to see it done here is because of the amount of content that's generic.
We will talk offline about them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Again, this is what I've been asked.
Your comment?
All right, great, thank you. He's presenting.
Sure.
better. Hi, I'm Adrian. I would say this is an update on the design team, but it's not really. It's a initial statement of what we are and what we plan to do. Unlike nearly every other presentation in TEAS, both slots, this is not about Yang models. Except it turns out that Yang models will form part of the work we do. So the design team is quite a large design team. It's maybe a bit larger than we're used to for a team. So it's going to take a little bit of cat herding. I think the chairs were aware that there were other people who wanted to help as well, but we had to draw a line. So sorry to those people who are not on it, but there will be opportunities to contribute and make your voice heard later. So what are we doing? 3272 was published way back in 2002 and actually started its work in 2001. And it's called Overview and Principles of Internet Traffic Engineering, which is quite a glorious title. Since then, I think TE has developed significantly in the internet, where it was an emergent technology before it's now commonplace. And the techniques that we use to deliver it have developed, broadened, stabilized. Additionally, we found that the term TE is getting used in a number of working groups, which is a good thing, but there has been some debate about what people mean when they say TE, and I think that's what kicked off the initiative to look at this. It seems that the definitions that we have in 3272 are not adequate for today's world. And additionally, 3272 points at a lot of interesting but very old references. And there are now better references within the IETF that we can use. So given all that, we plan to revise 3272. That is to say, in IETF technical terms, we will obsolete it. So a complete replacement, but we will use as much text as we can because we're lazy. Our charter is actually 3 paragraphs, but these are the 2 that matter. Update 3272 through a full revision, strengthening definitions, introducing new definitions, bringing it up to date with current best practices, and making lots of references to other existing or ongoing IETF work. And then, so that's the core of what we'll do. How we'll do that is make regular updates. I love the word regular updates, so that's once every 27 years. Yeah, chairs? Yeah? So we'll make regular updates. I think that the plan is really that will be fairly frequent. And we'll talk about it here in Prague, and our intention is to have a draft by 105 in Montreal, so that the working group can pick that up, make it a working group draft, and the design team can fall back to being normal IETF participants. How we'll do this? We have a mailing list. It has an open archive, so you can go and read the emails that we send to each other in the team. It's a closed list, so you can't send to it. Well, you can send to it, but it hits my moderator's queue. And the intention is that the list is for the design team to have a conversation. We're going to work on the draft in Cramdown on GitHub. And that means I have to learn 2 new technologies at once. I've been dragged kicking and screaming into the 20th century. We're starting with 3272, which I've turned into Cramdown, and we will edit on that. We expect to remove a lot of text and then add sections for new technologies and new work. Where those sections are relatively small, we do not expect to explain how each section, each technology works. We expect to mention it and then reference. We will publish draft revisions as we go along. It's not our intention to do all the work and come up with a finished document and then publish it. And I think we're worried. 3272 is 71 pages long. That's a big document. It's a hard read, frankly. And we have lots of material to add. So since we do not want to end up with 150 pages, we will be deleting and editing and compressing. I mean, compressing the text, not compressing the bit stream. You can contribute. So as I said, the list is closed, but we want to hear what you think. I think the best approach is to wait until we push out the first version, which will be fairly rough and may have lots of empty sections. And then scream about it. Scream about it on the working group list or in the corridors or private emails or whatever. And do feel free to send text. I don't think anybody in the design team really wants to spend their time writing text. So if you send it to us, that would be great. If you're a little less enthusiastic, but you're concerned, then wait until it's a working group draft and contribute in the working group as normal. The design team is going to meet on Thursday so that we actually sync up on who's who and who's doing what and how GitHub works. And then we're actually going to get some real work done. Anyone have a question about that?
Thank you. Stay tuned. We're going to point something at you later. Next up, Young.
This is Young again. This model is basically customer subscribing to performance monitoring data of their interest so that they can subscribe to and be able to see their data in terms of VN virtual network level and also TE tunnel level. And in doing so, we also added autonomic scale out mechanism also subscribed by customer so that some automation, some level of automation can be done in this context. So we basically use Young push mechanism, netconf Young push mechanism to subscribe, to allow customer to subscribe certain key performance index performance data and be notified through Young push mechanism. We have two modules. One is T level, and the other one is, I think we call ACTN level, but I think we can replace as VN level. That's what it meant. And autonomics for scaling intent for T tunnels and virtual networks. Basically, setting exact condition when a tunnel or VN should be scale in, scale out, based on not just one parameter, but it can be multiple parameters at the same time. And operation can support and or min max depending on the performance parameters. So we allow that. So as I said, we have two modules. One is VN level, the other one is T tunnel level. Just give you some brief status. I think 102 IETF I presented, and at the time we got some good support. And likewise, last IETF. But there are two pending issues raised up. One is packet loss and delay variation. These are a little bit more packet centric, so we deleted from this model. Actually, we didn't delete it, but T-type, actually, they delineate this packet versus non-packet. So we import T-type performance metric. So we depend on that, and now it's cleaned up. So we don't have these two parameters anymore to stay as generic. And I think Pavan asked me how does the scaling mechanism work. So we added the section, and also I'm going to present in the next slide. Yeah, so in terms of scaling mechanism, let's say client wants to set scaling out operation as an example, based on, say, two performance types, two-way delay and utilized bandwidth. This is just arbitrary pick. It may not make sense, but as an example for TA tunnel. So in doing so, it can set threshold time. This means duration for which the criteria must hold true. So it can be 1 hour, it can be 1 year, or whatever. So customer can specify. And cooldown time is basically duration after scaling action has been triggered. There should be no further operation. It's kind of cooling down so that we avoid some kind of hysteresis type of thing. And yeah, scale out operation type. This is kind of and or min max, whole bunch of type depth defined. And then we have a list of conditions as a list. So you can put multiple performance parameters per se. It can be one, or it can be two, it can be multiple within the confines of different performance types. So in this case, list one, say, two-way delay, and performance type is two-way delay, and then threshold value is, say, 300 millisecond. And list two is utilized bandwidth, say 300 megabit. So if my tunnel, put as a reference there, meets these two conditions, please do scale out. Likewise, you can define scale in, depending on the operation that you want to see. So this allows the client to set what they want to see, their tunnel or VN, from their perspective, from their performance criteria perspective, to allow them to set. So this is the third time I present. Hopefully, we authors believe that we addressed all the concerns that commented on this draft for last 3 IETF, and we think that it has a good base for working group adoption this time.
Comments? I think you have.
Dieter Beller, Nokia. When I read that draft, I thought that I will learn something about or subscribing to telemetry and about some attributes that can be monitored by a client by subscribing to telemetry. Then I read something about this scaling in, scaling out, and cooling down. And looking into the body, the main body of the document, it was really very hard to understand what this draft is all about. So I think the draft in its current state really needs some significant improvements.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think we explain within the Yang the description, but not in the main body, so that people have to read Yang before they understand. But I agree with Dieter that a lot of description has to be spelled out in the body of the draft, so that people wouldn't get lost.
Yeah, but frankly speaking, I don't want to search for terms in the Yang code and read the descriptions there. I think the main body of the document should actually describe what this draft is all about.
That's what I just said.
And if you look at the preview, I think people should be able to understand what it's all about. I don't know. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
I think he agreed with you.
Yes, I agree. And
he agreed with you.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I guess if you had just said yes.
How many times? Yes, absolutely.
There were a couple of comments made the last meeting that don't seem like they were fully addressed about, I think we're okay about making things separating out technology layer. I think we're okay there, but about being careful about thinking about what's really ACTN specific and what's really generic there, and being careful about that. So
Yes.
in your cleanup that you're talking about in the intro writing,
Yes.
just keep that in mind and then translate that. Let's see what the next version is, and let's try to talk about it between now and Montreal on the list. And if we get good agreement that enough has been done, we can look for adoption before Montreal. If it takes another discussion, it takes another discussion.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
So you're saying that the draft need to be a little bit more updated, avoiding the context,
Yeah, especially the
ACTN context.
yes, and also the
description.
constructs that do not have references, right? The things like scaling in, scaling out stuff.
Right.
See if you can explain that outside of the model.
We did, yes. In the section, we created a new section, as I said, section 4, I think. Yeah.
And if you're defining something new, you have to fully define it. Even better, though, is to define a reference which defines the thing.
So after, before adoption, or?
Yeah, that's definitely before adoption.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly, I think Dieter's comment is right, is as you read it, it's really hard to figure out what you're doing. So get that intro text in there.
Okay.
Just as a co-author, Daniel King, of the document, I appreciate that, readability improvements, will help with the document. But this is a document that we've been working on now for the best part of 2 years. So trying to have something which is, perfect, and then sort of call for working group adoption just seems sort of a bit tough. I mean, clearly telemetry is kind of a hot topic. There's requirements from the ACTM framework. We've talked about the need for a customer subscription model at previous working group sessions. So if then summarizing the chairs at this point, we're only going to adopt when Dieter is
No, we're going to
happy
adopt
with-
when we do the things that we've talked about previously. Some of the comments that were mentioned at the last meeting weren't addressed. So I don't think it should be a surprise that we're saying, go do the things we talked about before.
Okay.
And, Dieter did bring up a good point, and that is something that would be great to address before. I think if we go look at the guidelines for Yang models, you'll find that it says, don't use just the Yang model, don't show the whole tree, give some narrative as to what's going on. Yes, Yang is about readability, but give the intro. So, I don't think we're saying anything that, primarily the biggest thing is not addressing the comments from the previous meetings.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing. And this other one is something that has to be addressed before it's published. Does it have to do before adoption? That's why I said, let's see where we are after the next version.
Good. Okay, so we've got some goals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ego.
Right. That won't work.
Okay.
We'll do it.
All right, I'm Igor. Thank you. Cheers. Okay, so I will present a quick update on the document that we presented for the first time on the last IETF in Bangkok. Right. So the idea is very simple. Basically, what we're saying is that there are numerous models today that describe how the packet, once classified to be part of a particular service, should be put on the transport tunnel to get delivered to the service destination. There are many examples for the services. John just presented one. There are others. All these models describe such things in their own service-specific manner, and all of them, as far as we know, refer to the tunnels by their names, basically by IDs that could be used to go to the respective data stores and extract the information about tunnels. This is a very simple, obvious, and straightforward approach, but it has problems. Can you do next? The problems are that, for one, who is to say how many services of possibly many types you can put on a tunnel or a set of tunnels, and so that the service will satisfy the SLAs. Okay. What happens if one or several services require more resources suddenly that were pre-planned? Right? How many other services could be put on the same set of tunnels? Right? What happens if a tunnel failed and it cannot be restored, so you have to basically put all the services on the other tunnel? So the basic and important question is this. Is client required to do the remapping every time when the tunnel infrastructure gets changed? Okay? So what we're saying, this doesn't have to be this way. So what we suggest, instead of mapping services to explicitly to tunnels, you can map them implicitly to tunnel pools, referring by tunnel pool color. Okay, so once you do this, you can forget about service mapping and remapping and concentrate only on managing tunnel pools. Okay. So what is a tunnel pool? It's basically it's a set of tunnels connecting different destinations, assumably with the same set of properties. For example, you may have a pool of fast tunnels, basically that guarantee certain delay constraint for every tunnel that's part of this pool. So you can manage this tunnel separately from the services. And what you can do is, for example, start with a single tunnel, monitor its bandwidth utilization, and if necessary, you can add, remove, replace tunnels without any concern about service remapping. You can add more sites to the services, more destinations. Again, you set new tunnels, and that's it. The service already mapped to the proper pools. Okay. Next. So what happens since we presented it for the first time? We did some changes. We had discussions with some people, especially useful with my esteemed colleague Iowa Guo from Huawei, who pointed out that certain parameters that we specify for service, so for services and tunnels, are redundant and could be actually accessed through respective data stores, right? Like say tunnel bandwidth or protection capabilities, costs, things like that. So we removed that, and we left only parameters pertinent for service to tunnel mapping, such as like tunnel encapsulation. What do you want to put on a packet if you want to use a particular tunnel, or client encapsulation? What additional information you need to demultiplex services that use the same tunnel. So the next steps, basically, we want to have obviously more discussions. In contrary to what Adrian said, our list is not closed, so we welcome everyone to join. And we have one question to the chairs and working group. So far we are talking about mapping services to end-to-end tunnels, whether implicitly or explicitly. But there are situations when you want to have more for the service rather than transport connectivity. For example, some manipulation with the payload, things like that. So it is interesting to consider steering services to things like abstract topologies, especially service function aware topologies, or enhanced VPNs or slices expressed in any other way. Okay, so so if it's an interesting proposal, so should we use this framework and work within this document, or should we do it as a separate work? That's it.
So can you talk a bit about how this relates to the other service mapping document? We have discussed this offline, but I guess it's useful to talk about it here.
What we're saying is that all these service mapping documents, when they map services to tunnels, they basically specify explicitly tunnel names. What we're saying that it is possible to add to this capability to specify, instead of tunnel name, tunnel pool ID, basically.
I took what Pavan was saying was sort of a more, not in response to your question to the chairs, but a more general question.
No, I'm answering the general question. It has nothing to do with the question that I just asked.
Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Maybe we should let Dhruv.
Yeah, hi Dhruv here. I actually think this is needed, but the weird thing that we have done in the group is that we kind of started the T service mapping, something like this, where you had an independent model, where you had the T on one side and all the services on the other, and we were creating a model. But we as a working group thought that, no, we should augment the service models and include all the information there. And we went and did that in the T service mapping. But now we are creating a new model called T pool, and where the pool ID, where on the left hand side you have the services and the right hand side you have the tunnels. So it is a small subset of what we were doing before. It has a use case. I'm not saying it doesn't, but we have just gone round and round a little bit. So it would be good if we can focus a little bit and see one solution that can solve both the T service mapping as well as this T pool solution, if it is possible, rather than two disjoint solutions out there.
Yeah, the semantics are quite different.
Yeah.
So it's solving, really solving a different problem here. Now, there may still be value of bringing these things together and figuring out how to optimize the complete solution rather than looking at them piecemeal. The answer to what we came up before was based on a very specific scope of one-for-one mapping.
Actually, that was
it was one for N mapping, but it wasn't the pool, but it wasn't the pool concept. So
even in this pool concept, I think the main thing is like there are multiple tunnels. Though in the document, I see that they can say that this tunnels can be shared across services. I'm not disagreeing there. But from the Yang point of view, that's such a tiny little change. But we are creating a brand new Yang model again to solve this one problem. So that was where I was coming from.
And it goes to, actually, interestingly enough, it also goes to what we do, the SRTE discussion that we had earlier, where we're not creating a single model, we're using information across multiple models in order to do a composite and useful information. So there too, we're taking the distributed one. So, we
except that we're actually proposing a model here.
Right, but he's talking about a different document. He's talking about the other document.
Yeah. No, I was trying to say that we basically, it's not like we complement your solution. We're helping you with a particular problem that you didn't consider. For example, what happens if you actually there is an oversubscription, right? So if you put more services on the tunnel that they can carry, okay? So should you always remap these services on tunnels in such cases explicitly?
Yes. So let me answer that question. In our, the way we were thinking of using it, we had another abstraction called VN. So our thinking was that the service is getting mapped to VN, and the tunnels is like your tunnel pool, where they can come and go and get created and things can change. But you have a much bigger abstraction called VN, which doesn't change as frequently. So same problem being solved in a different way. Here we are calling it a tunnel pool. Here, earlier it was VN.
I'm not talking, we didn't have in mind only your model, right? So for example, there are like a layer 2 VPN service, layer 3 VPN service, mapping signals to like a Ethernet tunnel that's Hamyan presented. All of these things require services once classified to put on one tunnel or many tunnels, and there's no easy way to actually define or pre-plan how this could happen without remapping afterwards during the operation, to make it breathe, basically. So that's what we're suggesting. And what we're saying, we're going even further because it's not just end-to-end tunnels. There could be like you can steer services to slices, for example. Okay. So it's much more general problem.
I think, Igor, one point is which I want you to realize is that there is still an overlap. We cannot say that like when you are implementing this, on one side you will implement the T service mapping thing, and then you will also implement the T pool, tunnel pool. So I want a clarity which one I'm supposed to use when, and that part I'm not getting right now.
What I'm saying is that we put pool between tunnels and your services. Okay, so
that is missing right now. That's what I'm basically saying.
Complement your solution. Yeah. So we make it easier to manage that.
Himanshu from CN, I have a question. Do you cover the tunnels going to the same destination for this?
Yes.
So in that scenario, how is are there any discipline with respect to list fill, most fill, random fill, and all those for distributing the traffic on these tunnels?
Yeah, so basically what we're saying is that once a service is mapped to a tunnel pool, the device can take any tunnel from the pool which goes to the necessary destination. Okay, so how you do multipass, it's a separate question. If you want to basically whether you use like entropy labels or whatever, it is a separate issue. But the important thing is that you do not say which exactly tunnel you're using. You just say use quick tunnel to get to Himanshu.
But okay, but there is no way to.
Yeah. We do not go into this. This problem is solved, right? So if you want to, if you are concerned about breaking, say like TCP flows and stuff like that, that's not our concern.
No, not that. I was thinking more in terms of distributing for load balancing, right? So if you're subscribing the services or putting the services on the tunnel, which tunnels to choose with respect to which discipline you are using. Do you want to use the most fill, least fill, random fill, put it in any of the tunnels, or first fill up first tunnel, then go to second tunnel and things like that?
But this is a multipath problem, right?
Okay, we can take.
Okay.
So we still have these two documents that do talk about mapping client services to transport tunnels. So there, even though this sort of complements the other one, there seems to be room to put them under the same umbrella. So I would encourage the authors to talk to each other and see what they can do about it.
Yeah. So I have already one model that basically I stopped working on because chairs forced to actually to get with somebody else for which I think was no problem. It wasn't in this working group, right? It was in Medport. But what I'm saying is that we have provided like common infrastructure to many such models. So if we combine, we need to combine all of them into one umbrella, and then we'll have that. Otherwise, it should be a separate work, in my opinion.
Yeah. So we're asking you to get with the other authors and come up with a proposal for the working group.
Okay. All right.
And in terms of the other question you had, we didn't forget about it.
Yes.
I think it would be interesting to bring up some specifics. It's a little hard in abstract. So I think in abstract, if you have additional information that is not sort of the traditional network TE piece, but you think makes sense to integrate into the model, bring it forward and we can talk about it. And one of the things we may say is that piece of information, yeah, is a fine augmentation to what we're doing, augmentation to a TE model, but it's not really our group that should be doing it. Or we'll say that there's no group that's appropriate and make sure our ADs agree and we'll do it here.
So, but we are doing, say, enhanced VPNs, for example, right?
Yeah, we're already doing that.
All right. So for example, if I want to put a packet on enhanced VPN and I want to keep it within this VPN, regardless how it's processed, right? So it needs to be somehow steered and maintained on this VPN.
Yeah. So the sort of the inner working function, the entry function into the TE network, where do we define that? And let's say we're talking about a EVPN model or an L3 VPN model that we want to map to TE, and we're probably talking about, we have to decide whether we're talking about an augmentation to a T model to do it or an augmentation to a BEST model to do it. And based on the proposal, we can talk about where's the right place to do it. And either way, we'll have to synchronize across groups. So I think in abstract, the answer is, well, let's see some specifics that you want to work on, and we'll judge in the the specifics rather than give a categorical no or categorical yes.
I volunteer Derek to part of this work. So basically, we discussed already this eventuality that we will have to steer packets not just to tunnels but to certain abstractions, and we will provide that also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you can pull the mic up.
Can I sit down?
Or you can sit down.
Okay, this is Hao Mian, and I'm going to introduce this work, interworking of the GMPR's control and the centralized controller system. Okay, so in the beginning, we started with the motivation of this work again, and this is try to review what is the previous GMPR's control plane with a distributed format, shown as the left-hand side of this one, and composed by a group of protocols, including the R3PT, OSPFT, and the RMP. But with the emerging of the controller systems, actually, we introduced further controller hierarchies into the full system, but the control plane and data plane still remain unchanged. So new technologies introduced would include the ACTN controllers, the netconf and the restconf plus YANG model, and also the PC protocols as a centralized control functions. So centralized is always, we have to interwork with distributed ones and the traditional solutions. So this work gives a description on how these two groups of the protocols can be worked together. So this work was presented in Bangkok and migrated from CCAM to TEAS. So from after Bangkok meeting, we have made 2 updates based on the comments from the technical advisor and the chairs. So in particular, we changed something, especially for the ACTN. This is not an ACTN specific draft, and we try to use the term as only an example of the implementing for centralized control, but not the only one. That means we don't restrict the work to be ACTN. And we also correct some of the description on the usage of the existing solutions, like the OSPFT's place should be on the between the devices. And we also add some considerations on security and manageability considerations as well. So currently, the next step, the first step is to ask for a working group adoption, because we think we were in good support at previous 2 meetings in 2 different working groups. And there would be still one pending issue from Lou on the mailing list to provide more detailed description on section 7 about scenarios. But I think we reach agreement with chairs to address that after working group adoption. So some more
By the way,
details,
that was agreement from an individual. If others want to state a different opinion, they certainly can.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
please.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. If you
Okay. So I have a question on one of the previous slides where you showed the different control planes. That one, yeah. Lou Anderson, is there an obvious reason why LMP is not part of both stacks?
Why not?
LMP. Yeah, but why is it not part of the other stack? I'm just asking. I don't understand why LMP is a link management protocol, and you need that in those type of stacks, don't you?
Well, generally, we talk about the, say, discovery, signaling, and routing functions. They are actually solved by this group of protocols. Are you talking about the orders, or we should remove LMP here?
I say LMP in that left stack is fine. It should be there. Then I'm asking, why is it not part of the stack to the right?
Yeah, the question is the functionality provided by LMP, how is it addressed in the other stack?
I'm not
Well,
sure. Is there an obvious reason why it's not there?
There could be there as well, yeah, but it's not the main focus of this work. It's just we're cooking together.
LMP. Okay, think about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thank you for reminding. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. How many people have read the draft? And this is actually a trick question. I'll tell you the trick. So the trick here was to see how many of our design team members have read the draft, because I have a question for them. Does it seem Adrian's design team? I think we only have one design team right now. I mean, there's other design teams in the IETF, but not in this working group, unless I've missed something. So the question to the design team members who have read or haven't read is, does it seem to you that this work actually folds into your work? Because I know we have explicitly talked about wanting to do fully decentralized, fully distributed control, fully centralized control, and hybrid. And to me, this is a description of hybrid. And so the question is does it make sense to roll it into yours in some way? And by the way, some way could be, yeah, publish it individually and we'll point to it. That's also some way.
This is Adrian commenting that the camera is placed beautifully, so I don't have to be able to see Lou. I do not speak for the design team, even though you just assigned it to as my design team.
I think you're the lead, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I lead from behind. I don't think fold in is the right word. I would not, if you look at the size of this document, I would not expect to encompass this document in 3272 bis. Should 3272 bis have a couple of paragraphs that say, yes, there are different ways of operating the TE network, and one of them is distributed and one of them is centralized, absolutely. And actually, I talked about that this week with a couple of people on the team already. And then a reference to this. Okay, so I think that this document falls in TEAS scope and is actually quite useful, and then can be something that gets referenced.
Okay, other comments? As Adrian pointed out, he's not the only design team person in the room, and others who are on the design team raised their hands. As I said, it was a trick question. If anyone else would like to comment, you're also welcome. I'm not trying to exclude anyone. I was just trying to put them on the spot. That's all. Other comments? No.
Andy Malice, yeah, I have read the draft, and I think it is quite useful, especially when describing, as Adrian said, hybrid systems. And I would certainly like to see it go forward.
Okay, great. All right, so the one issue that I think is a major issue for going forward, although it is not necessarily a blocking one, is that the description says that ACTN, as an example, but then everything else is ACTN. And like we've said before, is unless there's something that's truly ACTN specific, we shouldn't make it ACTN specific. We should make it so it allows for anyone to follow that. And there are definitely TE controllers out there that don't follow ACTN. And there's no reason why this work shouldn't cover that.
Yeah, actually, I tend to agree with this. And we, in the last iteration of revising, we did remove some of the, terminology used for ACTN specific and replaced by those kind of controller system or some similar terms. Try to, broaden the usage of the centralized, technology.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that this is not an ACTN specific work, of course, and if there are something missing and should be changed again, we will do that.
Okay, that's good. With that, so how many think this is work that the working group should be working on? It's a reasonable number. How many have read the draft? It looks like almost the same number. I can't tell if it's identical. How many people think this is a reasonable starting point for the working group? I think that's actually the most. So we have maybe more than who think it's interesting work. Thank you. The last who thinks that we should not accept this document as a starting point? No one. So that's very helpful feedback. We can take it to the list.
Sure.
I would ask that the next version that you issue, whichever one it is, other than if it's labeled 00, include an open actions list in it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Jeffrey, if you're. So this is a document that was presented in MPLS working group before. Since we are already progressing the RSVP RMR based document here, we thought we should progress this as well. Jeffrey will introduce it to TEAS and we'll take it from there.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to point out that I actually made a mistake on this first slide. The draft is actually now in the TEAS group, so it's TEAS RMR RSVP2MP, and it's actually version 02. So this is about the optimization we could do to set up RSVP P2MP on a resilience MPLS ring. We presented in the MPLS group before. It's rehome to here, and this is my first time presenting here. I requested comments on the mailing list. So far, has not generated discussions there. Hopefully, this presentation can trigger some discussions, and then we'll bring this towards the working group adoption. So first, the traditional RCVT P2MP signaling. Here, I'm using a ring topology, but imagine this is just a general topology. The way the traditional RCVT P2MP works is that you set up one sub LSP for each leaf. And in the control plane, there's one sub LSP for each leaf, but in that will actually generate merged forwarding state so that you don't have the individual forwarding state towards each leaf. But that does mean that there are lots of redundant pass and residue state near the tunnel ingress. In this example, in R1, the tunnel ingress, you would have 3 pairs of pass residue state. On R2, you have 2 pairs, and so on and so forth. And also, each leaf is explicitly listed. Each sub-LSP optionally can have its own explicit pass. And if you want to do tunnel protection, you would need additional state as well. On a ring topology, all this could be optimized away if you're using the RMR related optimizations. The first optimization is that you only need a single LSP to set up the the tunnel. For example, in this case, if you have R1 is the tunnel ingress, and R2, R3, R4, and R5 are the leaves. You could have a single LSP going clockwise all the way to R5. Alternatively, R1 could set up two sub-LSPs, one clockwise to R4, the other one counterclockwise to R5. But these two sub-LSPs in two different directions is not for protection purpose, just to reach different set of leads in different directions so that you have better pass or a better latency. Here, notice that we don't really need explicit paths. All you need to do is just send it along the ring. Another optimization is that you don't even need to list the leaves anymore. You can allow implicit leaves. In that case, the pass message simply lists the ingress itself as a leaf, and you send the pass message along the ring. While it goes along the ring, if a leaf knows that it should, if a node knows that it should be a leaf, then it will send the resume message towards the p-hop, and then that will set up the state. You could allow both explicitly leaves or implicitly allowed leaves. And also notice that whether it's explicit leaves or implicit leaves, the traffic will stop at the last leaf, even if you're sending a pass message around the ring. It's because the last leaf will send the resume message towards the p-hop, and then the last leaf will stop the traffic there. Now, for protection, you do not need additional signaling or state, because you could just tunnel the traffic in the other direction when there is a failure, and that's before the global repair finishes after a failure. In this example, let's say we have a tunnel that with R2, R3, R4 being the leaves, and then all of a sudden the link between R2 and 3 breaks. Then R2 will send the in-flight traffic before the global repair finishes, will send the traffic, tunnel the traffic in the other direction using the ring LSP to R3. And R3 will continue, will turn it down, continue to send it to R4. Node protection is similar. It's just you send it to the next node. Live protection, in most situations, you don't need live protection anymore, because as soon as you detect a failure, you just tunnel the traffic along the ring in the other direction. And the traffic restoration should be really fast. If you really care about the live detection for your mission critical scenarios, yes, you can do that. But that would assume that the application or the downstream leaf off the ring will be responsible for removing the duplications. To do that, you just set up two opposite direction sub-LSPs to reach all the leaves and send the traffic in both directions. And now the leaf will receive duplicate traffic because it's receiving traffic in two directions, and you will deliver the traffic the duplicates, but rely on the next node of the ring to do the discard the duplicates. And with this, you can also do NP to NP. Now, if the pass message also carry a label used for downstream node to send traffic upstream, then there you have a NP to NP tunnel there. And if the ingress happen to set up two sub-LSPs in two directions instead of just one direction going down the ring, then the ingress node, being the root, is responsible for sending the traffic into the other direction from the direction you're receiving. So what I talk about is just the general procedure description on how it could be done, and there will be some related RSVP objects For the RMR object, it basically indicates that we want to do RMR optimizations. Here, it would include the ring ID and the ring direction. It means that where you want, in which direction you want to send traffic. And then the existing S2L sub-LSP descriptor list, which typically lists the explicit leaves. Now it could also list the ingress itself to indicate that it's actually also solicited implicit leaves. And also the pass message could carry label objects for MP to MP tunnels. So as mentioned before, this was presented in MPLS group before. It's rehomed here. We seek comments, and then after some polishing, we want to request working group adoption. In fact, at this time, the authors believe that we are already in a state ready for the adoption. But for the working group, I would like to see more discussions, suggestions, comments, and then go from there. We can request working group adoption whenever the working group feels ready.
All right, thank you. Questions? Comments? So this document is like the other RMR document where it's a little different than a normal individual contribution, is it's actually being sent to us by another working group who thinks it belongs here. My memory is the last time around, it's not that they had fully reviewed or vetted it, it was just that they believed it belonged over here. And I suspect that it's the same here. I'm looking to Loa to either nod or disagree. So he's nodding, he's saying, yes, it's not that they said that they want it published by TEAS, it just rubber stamped by TEAS. They're saying it just needs to be worked through our normal process here. That said, we do have the other RMR document as a working group document, so it seems like a reasonable companion. So with that said, the MPLS chair is going to the mic, so I must have mischaracterized something.
So the RMR document,
Name?
I like the placement of the camera. Yeah. Sorry, Loa Anderson. The RMR documents are in, we have two in MPLS. The base document, that is waiting for an update after working group last call. So there is no reason because of other documents to wait for accepting this document. If it's okay to accept it, you can do that. There is also an LDP document in MPLS, and I think there will be a point-to-multipoint document going to, it's more like a point-to-multipoint framework document going to MPLS. And then there is potentially a document going to the Spring Working Group for segment routing. If I channeled Kireti correctly, that's what he said last time.
To clarify, on the multicast or P2MP side, indeed there is another informational document in the MPLS working group. Generally talk about on a ring or in a topology with rings, how multicast could work, whether it's native multicast or MLDP, P2MP tunnel, RSP, T2MP tunnel. It's an informational framework kind of document. Just describe how things could work there. And this one here is specifically about RSP-TE P2MP tunnel optimizations, including the procedures and the encodings, things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So going back to asking for comment, how many folks in the room are interested in RMR? Right, in the topic. In the topic. Okay, so we have just a few. How many have read this document? And this could be anyone. Maybe one more, maybe a couple more. How many think that we should adopt this document? About the same, but I'll note maybe some different hands. How many think that we should not adopt this? Okay, we have a person who thinks that we should not. Of course, that means that we should ask them why.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I'm not opposed to the work, but adopting it seems, I just went to the MPLS list quickly to see how much discussion there'd been on this before it came over the wall, and couldn't find any. And I'm just a little nervous that this is maybe premature.
Do you know that we have another RMR document?
I know that you
adopted?
have another RMR
Okay.
document, and also that the MPLS working group. So I'm not sort of thinking about where it belongs. It's just this specific multicast RMR seems to have had a dearth of discussion.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Good feedback.
I strongly support this work because this is Himanshu from Siena. Many of the mobile networks, mobile wireless backhaul networks are ring-based, and we see the scaling issues, and we really need these type of solutions. I had actually asked Kiriti maybe a couple of meetings ago to revive RMR stuff, and I'm glad that this work is now coming along. So I strongly support this. In fact, I want some more stuff. I will talk to you offline.
Yeah, I agree with, so a comment from the floor was please use the mailing list. I wholeheartedly agree. Is the multicast support included in the base MPLS documents?
Base RMR document, or?
Yeah.
It does not mention that.
It does not mention MPLS?
Right.
To me, that's a little more problematic than
It-
less discussion. It would be, is there a reason it doesn't belong there?
I think that initially it was just focused on the unicast side, and so we didn't want to. Later on, we start looking to a multicast solution on RMR. At that time, we didn't want to disturb the existing unicast document. So we do have another MPLS RMR document specifically talking about the multicast options and how it works with various kinds of tunneling technologies.
Is that an adopted working group document or an individual?
It's an individual. I think it's. I'm also going to request people to comment on that, and also request working group adoption. I didn't plan to present it again because there is no content change. I did address a lot of very a lot of comments from Loa. Thank you very much. And so that's the editorial, mostly editorial comments.
So Loa Anderson again. There is a reason why we haven't started the working group adoption poll, because we think the document is ready to be adopted. But we wanted to wait until we had done the conclusion of the working group last call on the RMR base document. So again, there is no reason to not adopt document here because of documents in MPLS, but you need to do that on their own merits on this document here.
If the base definition of how the data plane works isn't progressing in MPLS, I don't think it makes much sense for us to be doing work here on it.
The forwarding plane is no different from plane MPLS at all. Whether it's RMR or not, there's even for the RMR unicast itself, there is no change in the forwarding.
So I'm not sure we're arguing about anything that is going to really matter if it's going to move to adoption in short order in MPLS. you know, if Loa, you think it's going to be adopted in MPLS soon, we don't have to argue.
We're talking about the informational document, yes? The base document is through working group last call, waiting for update.
Yeah, but the multicast one that you were just saying, you're waiting.
What I call the multicast framework, actually talking about how it could work with different type of control planes. That document, I think, will be adopted in the MPLS in the near future.
Okay. It seems to me that polling the control plane document after that adoption happens seems like a reasonable ordering.
Okay, so you want, okay, so now I understand you. So you want to have the order, we conclude the working group last call on the base document. Then we do the informational document, adopted that in MPLS, and then you do the adoption here.
The first part is something you're saying. That's, you know, that's your own process, and that's fine. I'm not commenting on that internal process, that MPLS working group process. The second one is the adoption that I'm referring to.
Okay, that's fair.
And it sounds like that'll happen in short order, and also will provide a reasonable reference point for the work we're doing here.
So, do you know a draft that actually talks about zone?
Talks about what?
It was written by Adrian, talking about.
No, I know exactly what you're talking
about. Yeah, okay. So it's the same author that Adrian talked about. We are waiting for an update. However, I talked to Kiriti's co-author here, and he promised to start addressing the comments in the coming weeks. So we should be doing it fairly soon.
Look forward to this, your whoever definition of soon, and hopefully way before Montreal. Thank you. We should move on.
Thank you.
Italo?
Thank you. I'm Italo Busi. I'm presenting a draft describing some YAM model for MPLS-TP. And
here, I'll do it. Just say next.
Next, please. Okay, what was the problem statement we had to face? We had to support some capabilities to do topology discovery and tunnel setup of MPLS-TP network, especially the use case that we had to face was a multi-domain layer network where we have OTN network and MPLS-TP capabilities on top of it. So we have to set up OTN tunnels, expose those OTN tunnels as links in the MPLS-TP topology, and set up MPLS-TP tunnels over it. And the scope of this idea, the OTN, no impact on the OTN side, but we noticed that there were some missing information to provide the MPLS-TP topology and the MPLS-TP tunnel setup. So we had worked on that. Next one, please.
I don't know why it's giving me an X. Don't press.
Don't press. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. What was the approach? The approach was the fact that we take into account the fact that MPLS-TP is a profile of MPLS with the TE features. So the intention is that MPLS-TP topology and tunnel models should augment the generic TE topology and tunnel models, which are defined in TEAS. And what we did basically a gap analysis of what were the existing MPLS-TP TE models, and we look at and we add and develop the minimum set of attributes that we have not found in the TE or MPLS-TP models so far. So from a topology perspective, what we have is the network topology from I2RS, and the TE topology model is okay, and we had to augment the TE topology model with the MPLS-TP topology. We didn't find any MPLS-TP topology model, so maybe that's why we did that just for TP, but we will see it for the next steps. So at about the tunnel, we did exactly the same. we take the T tunnel and we augment it from the MPLS-TP tunnel, because we noticed that what we needed for that specific use cases was not available in the existing IETF draft. And the next test, maybe since TP and T are basically the profile of arch, maybe we can, the idea is maybe we don't need to develop an MPLS-TP topology and tunnel, we just need to make sure that the MPLS-TP TE topology and tunnel models are capable to be used in an MPLS-TP network. So what we can do, we can take the TP topology as a starting point to develop the T topology, or we can merge the attributes that we have defined in our TP tunnel model into the existing T tunnel model. And next, please. So what are the gaps that we have identified? For the topology, we have basically, we need to do all the augmentation for the technology-specific case in the topology. And the idea for the use case that we had, we said we don't need to augment the T label for topology, because the scenario that we have was a single domain tunnel, and the label allocation is done by network elements, so there is no need to report to the controller what are the restrictions on the labels that the network element supports, because at the end is the label allocating the label is allocated by the network element, the controller has no control of it. And if this is a generic, applies to every MPLS-T networks, we can keep it, otherwise we can work on augmenting those. For the T bandwidth, we have to report the maximum bandwidth on the link, the maximum reserved bandwidth on the link, and what is the unreserved bandwidth on the link. So we have created a case, MPLS-TP, to be added to the generic T topology to report this type of bandwidth. And also we have to report in the TTP and in the T-link what is the maximum LSP bandwidth, and we have also created a case over there. Next one, please. And for the tunnel setup, basically what we need to do is when we report the computed path property, so what is the path that has been computed for an MPLS-TP LSP, or for primary and secondary, or for the LSP, then we have the label hop object, which contains a label, and we have a case, and we have added a case for the MPLS-TP label, which we reuse the MPLS label defined by the archetypes. And then for the bandwidth of the tunnel, when you set up a tunnel, we have bidirectional tunnel symmetry, so we have only one bandwidth, and we specify it on the tunnel, and we specify what are the CIR, EIR, and all these attributes from the tunnel perspective. Yes, please.
By the way, we're over, so.
Sorry?
We're already over time.
Okay, I will, yeah, I'm almost done. So that's was basically those attributes seem sufficient for the use case that we had. Now, if you want to go and merge with the MPLS-T models, we have to think about some of the subtle technical issues. So that are some of the differences between TP and TE. One is bidirectional LSP. My feeling is that all the bidirectional LSP options that are defined by MPLS-TP are already supported by the T tunnel. So basically no impact, just make sure that this, my feeling is correct, is more than enough. We have a problem with ECMP. When you set up an MPLS-TP LSP, the path computation should make sure that it selects only links which do not perform ECMP. So there is no misordering of the packets over this as an LSP. So this is something that has to be taken into account if you have a common topology between T and TP. So some links which do perform ECMP can be used by path computation for LSP TE, but not for TP. PHP also, if you want to set up an LSP without PHP, you have to make sure that the link that you select to the last node is capable not to perform PHP. And also, if you want to do OIM, maybe when you set up the path, you want to make sure that the nodes along the path that you are setting up are capable to recognize the OIM packets with egal. I don't think there are other issues that has to be addressed in terms of topology and tunnel setup. All the other differences are in the OIM, which are out of scope here. But if I have missed any, I will be happy to know. And so these are the few items. I don't think there is any showstopper here. Just do the work. Next one, please. So the open issue I see is the first point is, do we agree as a working group that we should have only MPLS-TP models that covers both T and TP? And then basically what we can do is, based on that, we can address all the open issues that are still pending. Yeah. Thank you.
So unless the MPLS chair disagrees, our perspective is that TP is a profile of TE, not its own thing. So unless there's opposition from the TE, the MPLS working group, I would expect that it would be best to integrate it with the existing TE models.
Yeah, I agree. I want just to make sure that that's the working group.
Yeah. Is there anyone who would like to disagree in the minus 2 minutes we have? So that seems like the direction to go.
Okay.
I think it would be great if you send any changes you think that are necessary to the list.
Yeah.
We just discuss it there.
Okay. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
These are more just showing, but it's easy to what that we can do now. We can
pull it out, put it into separate topics on the list.
okay.
Let's discuss each one.
Okay. Good.
And resolve it that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate both sessions. We will see you in Montreal.
Exactly.
So maybe there's something in our initial deck.
I think that it can't render PowerPoint.